Hello and welcome on board the Viking Venus for today's special Thursday interview with me, Anne Diamond, for Viking.TV. Now, when I speak at public engagements and things, I often boast about how I think I had twice the best job in the world, doing breakfast television and then morning television in the UK. But I tell you what, my next guest trumps that, because she really has had probably the best job in the world. But when you hear her story, you will know that she didn't just get it by accident. She worked at it. She knew she wanted it. She knew she was super qualified for it and could do it. And she made it her job to get to that job. And she did it in the end. And it's a remarkable story, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, she did it by sheer strength of will. And isn't that, part of the success equation? When she did get it, for the full 8 years of his presidency, she was director of the White House Visitors Office, and she became one of the inner circle of the Clinton years. There's possibly nothing about life in the White House she does not know. She's Melinda Bates, and she's here with us right now here on the Viking Venus. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Anne. I'm thrilled to be here.
Do you agree with me? You probably had the best job in the world.
Absolutely, had the best job in the world. Unbelievable. And for all 8 years, which no one had ever done before me.
I know, you deserve a medal for that alone, don't you? I suppose before we talk about how you got that job, because as I say, you focused on it and you went for it, how did you know President Clinton, Bill Clinton?
We met the first week of freshman year at Georgetown. I was wandering around the campus, dazed, confused, overwhelmed. Where's my next class? Do I have the right books? Where's the cafeteria? And most important of all, for a young woman of 18, how will I make friends here? Because my family was from D.C., so I didn't live in a dorm, I didn't have roommates. I thought, oh, how am I going to get to know people? And into my confusion stepped a tall, skinny kid with a big head of curly hair, stuck out his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Bill Clinton. I'm running for freshman class president." And we've been friends since then.
It's funny you use that accent because you talk in your book, and I love the book, by the way. It's the book White House Story. Yeah, you talk about it at that very moment, even though he used that funny voice, which sort of rasped with you, didn't it?
I had never heard an accent like that in Washington before, I was tempted to laugh. Many people laughed at that accent, but my head fortunately said to me, "Don't laugh at this boy, because if you talk to him, you'll know somebody." Yeah. We spoke for 10 minutes. I wasn't really interested in school politics, but I was very interested in making a friend. And when he turned to walk away, I had an experience I have never again had in life, which is that my head and my heart said to me, this boy is an amazing person who is going to do something really important in life. I can't wait to see what that is.
That's not just a sentiment you feel in retrospect.
No, I absolutely felt it. And I speak all over, nationally, internationally. Often there's someone in the audience who met Bill at whatever stage of his life, Georgetown, Yale, Oxford, politics, and wherever, and they all will say, oh yeah, that's what it's like to meet Bill Clinton.
I know anyone who's ever met him always says, I would cross the road to bump into him. There are lots of other things they say that you can't say, I suppose, but charisma was there from the start.
He's like a supernova of charisma and charm, but that by itself might be empty. His is backed up with brilliance. I've never met a more brilliant, interesting, involved, curious man in my life. When I've been privileged to have dinner seated with the president, I always leave thinking, why didn't I carry it was before cell phones, why didn't I carry a little recorder in my bag? Because I will never remember all the different topics that he covered about things that I had never heard anyone talk about before, and that turned out to be absolutely fascinating.
Now, before we talk about the job and how you absolutely focused in on that job, how were you qualified for it? You had some interesting jobs yourself.
I had what at the time I thought was the world's most famous job. I was an exhibition supervisor at the National Gallery of Art, and I began there
in Washington D.C.
In Washington D.C. And I began there. My first day on the job was the opening of the special exhibition Treasure Houses of Britain, and our guests that morning to cut the ribbon were the two most famous people in the world, the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Well, on your first day at work?
My first day at work. And after they cut the ribbon, there were about 20 of us in a side room. We hadn't actually been told why we were there. The door opened, in walked the director and the Prince and Princess of Wales, and they walked up to me and began a conversation. It was surreal.
Oh, but first day in the business, and as you say, probably then the most famous people in the world. What did they say?
Well, the she was still shy. It was 1985. She was still shy and retiring. She sort of hung back a little bit. She was the most exquisitely beautiful human being I've ever laid eyes on. Her hair was not blonde. Her hair was gold. Her skin was the quintessential British porcelain, peaches and cream. And he, to my surprise, was a lot more attractive than I expected. He had beautiful skin. He was wearing a very elegant, bespoke suit. He's tall enough that I didn't see his bald spot, and I didn't care about his ears. And then he was the single most important thing in a prince: charming.
Yeah.
It was absolutely charming. He put me at ease right away. He asked me, did I think the exhibition would enhance tourism to Britain, as if my opinion meant anything to anyone. Oh, yes, sir, I was sure it would. Well, how would people know where to go? Oh, sir, we have the guidebooks for the treasure houses at the end of the exhibition, and so on, for about 5 minutes. And I knew that there had been people the previous night at a brilliant dinner at the White House, hosted by President and Mrs. Reagan, who had had a nanosecond in a receiving line. Yeah. Hello, how are you? Move on. And I just had a conversation with them. It was incredible.
I mean, that was day one, but it must have gone on to be a very interesting job in all sorts of ways.
It was, because so many interesting people come to the gallery, and because being on staff meant that I could walk through the galleries at my leisure without the crowds. So in a place where normally everyone, including the secretaries on up, has an art or art history degree, neither of which I have, I got the most fabulous education in art by simply being exposed to the world's greatest art.
So let's fast forward to your old friend Bill Clinton is running for the presidency. Did you get involved in the campaign?
I did. I wanted to work for him because I believed in his agenda for America, but I could not leave my family and my job in Washington to go to Little Rock. So a group of us, former classmates, friends of Bill's, as we're famously known, formed a committee in D.C. and we did everything we could to raise money and raise awareness. We made phone calls, and at the time, people forget, he was governor of Arkansas. Most of America had no idea who he was. So I would actually call people from a Georgetown list, for example, and they would say, Bill who? They had no idea. And we would sell tickets to events. We put on beautiful dinners. And if I could sell you a ticket to a dinner with a candidate for President of the United States for $250, I was over the moon.
My goodness.
So, of course, that's chump change in today's politics, but for us,
those were the days, weren't they? But we were also talking about campaigning in a day when there wasn't social media either. So it was about manning the phones and just constantly just badgering
raising
people.
Awareness.
Yeah.
Please contribute. Please come to this event. Please come to meet the candidate. You'll be charmed out of your socks. And
how did that go down with you and your family in a way, politically? I mean, I don't want to get into politics because that's the last thing we want to do. But don't you naturally come from a Republican family?
Yes, how nice of you to know that. My parents were Republicans, but they were Republicans in the classical, older sense of the word. And I had actually been a Republican until Bill ran. But I knew him. I believed in him. I had listened to his speeches. I thought, this is the future I want for my children and grandchildren in America. So they were happy for me.
So when, obviously we know that he succeeded and became president. When did you even know there was such a job as, being director of the White House Visitors Center? When did you set your heart on that job?
That's a perfect turn of phrase, Anne. For a whole year I had worked on the campaign, and I never once thought, oh, if he wins, I may get a job. Not once. Because I assumed, as I think many people do, that everyone who works at the White House must be either a foreign or domestic policy expert, or a numbers cruncher, or certainly an attorney, and I am not any of those things, so it never occurred to me. But the day after the election, I woke up thinking, I have loved working for candidate Clinton. I wonder if there's something I could do to contribute to President Clinton's agenda, but I couldn't imagine what that might be. So in those dark days before the interwebs, do you remember where we went for information?
Yeah.
Libraries.
No, libraries, yeah.
Yes. So I went to a library, and I found what Washingtonians refer to as the plum book. It's called that because it lists all the plum jobs that a president gets to fill when there's a new administration. In that book, I found a page that listed Executive Office of the President, and there were 10 positions listed, the name of the person in the position, and that person's phone number. And one of those positions was Director, White House Visitors Office, Miss Janet Johnson, and a phone number. Now, I was born in Washington. I had never been in the White House, didn't know the White House had a visitor's office, looked at that listing and thought, oh my goodness, the White House has a visitor's office.
Who knew?
I wonder if what Miss Janet Johnson does there is similar to what I did for 5 years at the National Gallery.
Yeah.
Now, of course, obviously the easiest way to find out would be to call the number that was right in front of me on the paper.
But that seems a bit harsh, doesn't it, to ring somebody up and say, I want your job?
Absolutely. I was too tender-hearted to do it. I thought, well, just the night before, the American people had shoved her boss, George Herbert Walker Bush, out of office. He'd be leaving. She would be leaving what I assumed was the best job she'd ever have. And it seemed to me that if I called her, it would be like heaping coals of fire on someone who was already probably pretty depressed.
Yeah.
So I told myself, okay, photocopy the page, take it home, think about what you will do, which I did. The next day I went back to my job. I was now at Macy's doing special events, and people had called my office with questions about a women's fashion show, a men's event, a kids event. And you know how you do in an office, you just make a list of all the calls and all the numbers and you start returning them. I was returning calls. I dialed a number. I wasn't really, it was just on the paper. I wasn't thinking about anything. I dialed a number. The phone was answered. This is what I heard. White House Visitor's Office. I'm returning a call from Janet Johnson.
The very woman.
The very woman. And they said, we'll see if the director is available. The next thing I knew, I was speaking to the director of the White House Visitor's Office.
What did you say? What was she ringing about?
She was ringing about an event, and I gave her the information she wanted. And when that was finished, I said to her, Miss Johnson, I used to be an exhibition supervisor at the National Gallery of Art, and I wonder if what I did there is similar to what you do at the White House. Would you mind telling me about it? Oh, fine, she said. So she spent 5 minutes at least, and I was frantically taking notes. When we finished, I said, under the circumstances, I hope my questions haven't upset you or offended you. And she laughed and she said, oh, no, not at all. If you come and take my job from me, I won't like it very much, but there's really nothing I can do about it. And she laughed again, and we hung up, and I had to sit down because my knees were shaking, because the universe had just said, Melinda, door opening here, door opening here. And I thought, okay, there is a job I'm perfect for. How am I going to get it? So I knew I would need a resume. I created my first ever resume. A friend took it to Little Rock, put it on every desk in the transition office, and I sat back to wait. I waited through the rest of November. I waited through December. One of the only Christmases of my life I have no recollection of, because now I'm focused, heart and soul, on what had become to me my job.
Yeah.
This is my job. I'm the person for this job. I have the qualifications, I have the experience. I know Bill really well. Didn't know Hillary yet, but I know Bill really well. I know social Washington, I know Capitol Hill and politics, I know philanthropy. I'm the person, this is my job. But I didn't hear anything. Now it's January. I haven't heard anything. You have to understand that Democrats had been out of office for so long that thousands and thousands of resumes were rolling through.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah.
But I didn't care about that because this was my job.
This is perfect for you. Yeah.
I got invitations to all the inaugural events, so obviously we were on someone's list, but not the list I cared about.
Yeah.
We went to the inaugural ball. It was very exciting. We watched the inauguration. To see someone you know that well be sworn in as president is quite an experience. But they haven't called about my job. So the next day, the Clintons hosted their very first public event, which was an open house at the White House. People sent in postcards, and if yours was chosen, you got to come walk up the driveway, shake hands with the new president and vice president, Hillary and Tipper, and then go through the White House. Yeah. And we were watching on television. It didn't go well. An aide came and whispered in Hillary's ear and said, she said, I don't know what she said to Hillary, but Hillary went and whispered in the president's ear, but she forgot he was mic'd. So the whole world heard her say to him, it's a mess outside at the gate. People who should not have gotten in did. People who should have gotten in have not gotten in, and it looks like we screwed all these people.
So the very thing that you'd have been brilliant at was letting them down already.
Right. So my husband turned to me and said...
And you're just watching this on the television?
I'm just watching this on television, aghast. My husband turned to me and said, why haven't they called you? This is what you do. You'd be perfect at it. And I spoke to him in a not very nice tone of voice and said, I don't know why they haven't called me, because it's supposed to be my job, but now he's president and they haven't called me, and I don't want to think about it anymore. 20 minutes later at my house, the phone rang. Yes, hello, yes, I'm calling from the White House. Oh, yes, I'm calling about the job of director of the visitor's office. Oh, literally, I was speechless. And she said, now, have you interviewed for this job? No, I haven't. Well, have you spoken to anyone about this job? Nope, not a soul. Well, she said, it's the strangest thing. I have been told you are the person for this job. We need to get you in here right away.
If only to sort out the mailing system. I mean, honestly. So they found you in the end?
They found me. My resume, I learned much later that during the transition, the president-elect was walking through the kitchen at the governor's mansion where people were discussing different jobs. And someone mentioned the visitor's office, and he said, I have a friend who's perfect for that, meaning me.
Yeah.
So they wrote it down, but here's the thing. They were completely focused on the West Wing. They were focused on the policy people, national policy and economic policy. And as often happens, I'm sorry to tell you, in the White House, the people in the West Wing look at the people in the East Wing and say to themselves, well, that's tours and events. We can deal with that after we get to our footing and we know what we're doing. And so they had put it off, not realizing the first public thing the new president would do would be the responsibility.
And I mean, I'm going to ask you what the job entails, but I know one of the things you make so pointedly in the book is that the American people own the White House. It is their house, and they feel, unlike Buckingham Palace is to the Brits or number 10 Downing Street is to the Brits, the White House, the American people feel they already have a foot in the White House. It is their right to be in there.
They have a deep emotional connection to it.
And it's that important.
And I will tell you, that was very inspiring and energizing to me, because my job, while it was exciting, also entailed a great deal of the office scut work and very long hours. And sometimes when I just thought, oh, my eyes are crossing with all this work, I would step out into the hallway in the morning and watch people come through on tours, or in the evening watch people come through for events, and I could see over and over that they had tears in their eyes because they were stepping foot into the White House, the people's house.
It is that important.
It's that important to them.
Yeah.
We tried so hard. Hillary, from the very beginning, said, we want this to be the most open and accessible White House in history, and that's your job, Melinda.
Yeah, gosh,
Yes,
big
ma'am.
one. I was going to say, what does the job entail? And that sort of encapsulates it. But what else does the job entail? It's the management of people.
Huge numbers of people. We figured out once that in the month of December alone, when there were regular morning tours, and then as soon as those tours were over, there were special afternoon tours to see the decorations. And as soon as those tours were over, there were receptions, but not just one reception. There'd be a reception from 5 to 7 and another reception from 8 to 10. We put 60,000 people through the house in a month.
60,000 in a month. And you've got to manage that and make sure, but not only manage the people, make sure they get what they want to see, but you've got to manage it round the schedule of the rest of the White House, and particularly the diary of the president.
Exactly. And for some presidents, that's probably easier than it would be with the Clintons, who I love dearly, but working with them is challenging because they always do everything at the very last minute. It's not because they can't decide, it's because they're always thinking perhaps there's a better way to do what we've planned to do. So you may have worked for a week on some event and you think it's all nailed down and it's going to be like this. And there were literally times when I was about to address a group of guests and one of my staff would come and whisper in my ear, the president has changed his mind and now he wants to do something completely different. And so that's what we would do.
I tell you what, I found the book unputdownable, but you are remarkably frank in it. And a little bit indiscreet, maybe. There's this one quote I wrote down. You say, I'm sorry to tell you, the people you send to Washington are mostly gutless wonders. You also say it doesn't take long for Washington to corrupt even decent people. And then you say, I used to wonder what the folks back home would think if they saw the nice neighbor man they sent to Washington behaving like an overprivileged, arrogant jerk with us to try to get some favor. But there were people who knew how important it was to take their own people around the White House. So they wanted a tour, and they wanted it from you, and they demanded their right for it. And they were rude.
Oh, they were willing to be quite aggressive about it. But I once had the wife of a member of Congress sit in my office and explain to me, she said, I don't think you understand. Access to these tours is more important to my husband's reelection than any speech he will ever give. And I took that to heart. I thought, very well.
Well, it's good that she said that, because that shows how important it is.
Well, we were looking for ways to make the experience better, but anything we could do to make the experience better meant fewer people would walk through.
Yeah.
And we came to realize that they didn't really care about the quality of the experience, the members of Congress. What they cared about was access and having people come through. And so that's what we did.
It's sad, though, that you say that some people turned into arrogant jerks.
Well, they would come to Washington as probably perfectly normal, perfectly agreeable people. But if you are surrounded 24/7 by staff and aides who tell you you're the most important person who's ever come to Washington, oh, you're the smartest person who's ever been in this office, we're so lucky to have you, over and over and over, it's not unusual that after a while you believe it. And then once you believe that you're the most important person in Washington, how can anyone tell you no to something that you want?
It must have gotten around the rest of the staff that you were indeed a very old college friend of Bill Clinton's. Did anyone resent that?
Resented, I don't know. I don't think I ever encountered that, but I was very careful of my privilege. My friendship meant that I was different from regular staff, so I could go places in the White House and attend events in the White House that normally a person in my position wouldn't have had anything to do with. So, for example, presidential press conferences. I would go to the East Room and stand in the back behind the press and observe. Normally a person in my position wouldn't do that. My most treasured privilege was that the staff knew that I would not waste the president's time. So I might go over to the Oval Office, or I might see the president at an outside event, and if he were not busy, I could share with him an anecdote, a mutual friend, a classmate I had seen, something I had read that I thought he would enjoy reading, something like that. And he liked that. And also jokes. He loved jokes. So if I had a great joke,
you gave him
I
some
would share that
jokes.
with
Yeah,
him.
great. But there was one guy you really hated, the usher, Gary.
Yes.
Who made it his business to make your life hell.
It was unbelievable. This is pretty much a happy, positive, cheerful, candid book. The only person I have anything bad to say about is the chief usher. The ushers are the people you never heard of who run the White House. They take care of the family first, and then they take care of the house itself. It's an enormous responsibility. And he was a man, I hope you've never worked with anyone like this. He made it his mission in life to make our jobs as difficult as possible. So I would say the First Lady would like us to do such and such, or the President would like us to do this, and his response would be, oh, you can't do that. The White House has never been used that way. And because we were new, at first I believed him. After all, he had the institutional memory. We deferred to his wisdom. Then I began to collect books written by former butlers and ushers and first ladies and read about what they had done in the White House. And I discovered pretty quickly that what the things we wanted to do for the president were perfectly normal things at the White House. So then I began to push back some. And it wasn't as if I were saying, I would like to do this.
No.
I was saying the president would like us to do this.
Yeah, because you'd often previously agreed it with. Tell me the story of the ramp up the stone steps, because this obviously part of the tours and part of the people that you were showing around were often disabled people, children, and adults using wheelchairs,
Right.
and yet and it wasn't very wheelchair friendly at the time.
It wasn't. There was, if you needed assistance going up a low flight of stairs there in the East Wing, you could ask an officer, go around a corner, and there was a lift, but you had to self-identify as needing help. Not everyone wants to do that. And in December of every year, we always put on a special tour for very, very sick children. Children in gurneys, children being carried in their parents' arms who were never going to see another Christmas. It was heart-wrenching. And I wanted to make it as easy as possible for them. So I got the National Park Service carpenters to erect a ramp that would bypass the steps and they could be wheeled up. And thank goodness I got one of the White House photographers to come and take pictures of the gurneys being wheeled up and the wheelchairs and so forth, because I loved the ramp. And after December was over, I wanted it to stay. And my nemesis, Gary Walters, said, no, it has to be removed. And I said, why? It's benefiting lots of people. It's like, no, you can't. So we had this sort of tug of war. And he told the First Lady that if she left the ramp in place, she would be accused of having altered the White House without permission. Now, number one, it's her house. She does not need permission.
Yeah.
And number two, it was not an alteration of the house. It was not installed in any sense of the word. It was merely resting on the floor. Wasn't nailed in place, glued in place. So we had this tug of war, and finally Hillary asked her chief of staff to mediate between us, and we sat down and he made his spurious case, which just amazed me. And then she said, well, Melinda, what do you think? And I opened a folder and I took out a memo I had sent to Hillary with these photos of the children being wheeled up,
that says it all, doesn't
explaining
it?
what we had done. And she had written on the memo and sent it back to me, this is fabulous. Maybe we can be an example for other historic houses. So the minute her aide saw that, she said, okay, the ramp stays.
Yeah. Argument.
And it's still there. They've built a much nicer one, and that's great, but there's been a ramp ever since.
Yeah.
But I'm really proud of having opened the house in that way for people with mobility
So
disabilities.
you should be. But I mean, it's astonishing that he made such a petty thing out of it.
Oh.
Was he there for your entire time in the
He
White House?
was. And we thought he was difficult with us because we were a different generation. It was a different political party. But one of the women who had my job before me for President George Herbert Walker Bush came to visit me one day. Very nice of her. We chatted quite a bit about the job. And I asked her, if you could do everything differently, what's the first thing you would do differently? And she, to my amazement, she said, fire Gary Walters. And I said, well, I thought he was just doing it to, no, she said, whatever he's doing
did it
to
to
make,
everybody.
He's done it to us as well.
Power, isn't it? Now I'm going to go out of sequence a bit here because as I was reading the book, I kept writing things down. So I must ask her about this, and this. You did occasionally take some time off. By the sound of it, it was one of those 25 hours a day jobs. But you were away once and you rang in to see how everybody was doing. This is the story of the plane that crashed into the White House. Now this, I didn't know anything about. I must have been having a baby or something at the time, and it didn't. But when you think of the timing and what happened later and everything, my goodness, tell me the story.
I had planned a holiday to Nantucket, and we were really enjoying the beautiful sea air. Did you know that pilots practiced landing their planes in Nantucket because of the fog, so that when they got to Britain, they'd know how to take off and land?
Crumbs.
Anyway. It's a beautiful place. And it was Monday morning, and we normally had an office meeting on Monday morning, so I called in for the office meeting. And one of my staff members said, well, there's no meeting this morning. And I said, what do you mean there's no meeting? Just because I'm not there, you should be. Well, they're all out on the lawn. Well, why are they out on the lawn? I remember the schedule. They shouldn't be out on the lawn. Where they're looking at the plane. What are you talking about? Have you not watched the news? No, I'm on holiday. I haven't watched the news. The night before, a young man who was drunk and stoned and very stupid had gotten into a plane and flown around and decided that he would like to land on the White House lawn. So he had come around this way and aimed for the house itself, but he did not realize that they were setting up for an event. The lawn was full of chairs and jumbotrons, and he literally crashed his lightweight plane into the south facade of the White House. He was killed. There was some damage, but it was a very light plane. There was some damage. So everyone on my staff was out observing this. There's a plane on the lawn. It was just unbelievable.
But when you look back on it now, doesn't it give you a chill?
It does. But people were critical of the Secret Service and said they should have shot it down. Well, they didn't actually have Stinger missiles on the roof of the White House. I mean, it's in the middle of a neighborhood.
Well, it is. Yes, indeed. What about the fun side of it? Because you did get to go on Air Force One.
I did.
And I think one of the things you said was such fun making calls from Air Force One to your friends.
Well, I had not been on Air Force One. I was very excited to be invited to go on a trip with the president. And I asked other people who had been on Air Force One, what's the best part? And to my amazement, they said the phones. And I thought, how could the phones be exciting? And they explained that in the staff cabin, there are two seats together, and between them are two phones. The gray phone is the regular phone, and the white phone is the secure phone. And when you pick up the phone to make a call, whoever you're calling, if the call is introduced by an operator on Air Force One. So your friend hears, I have a call for you from Air Force One. And they said, so if you have any old boyfriends that you want to sort of, dig in a little bit, make a list and call. I was a married lady. I didn't have any old boyfriends, but I had a friend, an attorney, who had worked very hard on the campaign on our committee. So I thought, all right, I'll call him. So I gave the number to the operator. She called, and my friend, Mr. Lee's assistant, picked up. I have a call from Mr. Lee from Air Force One. She became incoherent.
Well, me too. I would, yeah.
What?
Wow.
Wait, what? I have a call from Mr. Lee from Air Force One. Wait, what? Air Force? Wait, what? What? Air Force? I have a call for you. Round and round they went. Finally, the operator said to me, Miss Bates, would you like to just, I said, sure. So I spoke to his assistant and said, is not it's not there. She said, no, he's at Air Force One, Air Force One. But it had the desired effect because the partners in the law firm all had the exterior offices and the assistants were all in a block in the middle. So all of the other partners' assistants heard her say into the phone, Air Force One, there's a call from Mr. Lee from Air Force One. So he was pleased.
It had the desired effect. There must have been other wonderful moments. But you fought, I mean, there were wonderful moments, brilliant moments, moments where you knew this is the job. You must have had pinch me moments. But fighting bureaucracy all the time.
All the time.
The story of trying to sell those little wooden eggs for egg roll. Now, you make this big point. Yeah, that's right. It's on the bottom of the book cover. What's the hardest thing to do at the White House? If you can pull off an Easter egg roll, you can do anything. What's so awful and terrible about the Easter egg roll?
Well, in our time, it was an event for 30,000 people on the South Lawn on Easter Monday. It's an enormous event. It really takes a whole year to prepare, to organize, to get the sponsors, to get the activities, to get the talent. We used to have, for Hillary, it was a literacy event, so we always had stars reading stories. But if you're new, you only have between Inauguration Day, January 20th, and whenever Easter is that year. So it's very compressed. There are thousands of things I did in my job that I adored doing, was honored to do, would do again in a heartbeat. Not that. No, it's very hard.
But you wanted to get some little wooden eggs so that you could sell them in the White House shop for people to be able to buy lots of as gifts.
Right.
Because in commemoration of the egg roll.
The most sought after souvenir from the egg roll was always a little wooden egg in pretty pastel colors with an image of the White House and the signatures of the president and the first lady.
It's the ultimate collectible, really, isn't it?
Yes, and we added the paw print of Socks the cat. And they were very highly sought after. At one point they were selling on eBay for $25 a piece. And at that point I had a box behind my desk this high and this big full of eggs. And I looked at it and said, that's someone's college education right there. Let's send that off to archives. But in any event, I thought it would be nice if we had a different kind of egg. It would look the same, except it would have a little star on it to indicate it was not from the event, it was for sale. And it was to be sold by the White House Historical Association, who have a really lovely shop. And Hillary loved the idea and wanted this to happen. So we made our proposal to someone from the Historical Association, and they said, we will present the idea at our next meeting. I said, how about we'll come to your meeting and we'll no, it's fine, we'll present it. So what they did was they came back to me later and said, it needs more discussion and it'll come up again at our next meeting
put a committee
in 6 months.
Oh.
So what they were doing, the classic bureaucracy move, which is delay, 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 thinking if we delay long enough, you'll just give up and go. But we didn't give up. I was not going to give up to them. And by the way, we were saying to them, the First Lady would like this to happen. And also, by the way, Hillary raised $10 million for the White House Historical Association. So I kind of thought if she wanted it to happen, it should. But it was not going to happen with them. So we went around them. I found another vendor, a supplier who could make the little eggs and who did make them for us. We sold them at a kiosk on the Ellipse, which is the park south of us. And on Easter Monday, the first day they were available, I took myself down there after I did all the stand-ups on the lawn, and I bought boxes of them. A box for Hillary, for the president, for the chief, boxes for everyone. And the person selling them told me that the first person, when she opened that morning, had been someone from White House Historical Association who wanted to buy a bunch of eggs. And I said, did you sell them? And she said, no, we were waiting for you. You get the first one.
Doesn't that make you livid?
It made me really livid.
But that's the sort of thing you were dealing with that as well all the time, so like swimming upstream sometimes.
Yes, but they consistently underestimated my persistence. And in the face of adversity, I'm even more persistent.
I'll bet you are. I'll bet. You don't say no to you easily. Talking about the egg roll, there was the 1997 egg roll and the photos from Mars.
That was actually July 4th. That happened. I had been outside at the gate. It was the middle of Washington's annual humidity festival. 1,100 degrees outside. Now we've got 12,000 people have come in. They're seated on the lawn. I'm in the house where at least it's blessedly cool. I'm relaxing a bit, but we're waiting for the president to come down. There's a microphone set up on the balcony outside the Blue Room. The president should come out and make remarks. The crowd is very eager to see him. Well, it's Bill Clinton. He's always running a little late. This is normal, but the fireworks are going to start So I went to the usher's office. I called up to the residents, Mr. President, are you coming soon? Because the fireworks will start at 9:10, whether you come down or not, but everyone really wants to hear, yes, yes, I'm coming, I'm coming. He sounds very distracted. Okay. So I go back to the blue room and I'm pacing. Finally, I hear ding, the elevator from the residence has come to the state floor. President walks in the room. He's wearing a polo shirt and khakis because it's a casual event. In his hands, a long, narrow strip of paper with some colorful images on it. I don't know what they are. I don't care what they are. I just want him to go out and make the remarks. But he stops in front of me and says, Melinda, look at this, look at this. All right, Mr. President, what am I looking at? The first images from Mars. Wait, what? The first image, they had come, the Mars rover had taken these images. They had been beamed to NASA. NASA had sent them to the president's science advisor, who had taken them to the president, who had looked at them and was showing them to me.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So I was the first.
What a long way those photographs had come. Huh?
The next day, they were on the front cover of every newspaper and magazine, but I had seen them first in the hands of the president. That was a very special moment.
Oh, gosh, must have been. I mean, as well, you must have met so many big movie stars, celebrities in that time, because they all wanted to come to the White House, and you were very often the person to be showing them around. You say the best of all was Tom Selleck.
Oh, I got to spend a whole afternoon with Tom Selleck, and this is where I should tell you he is the most handsome man I have ever seen. He was wearing the suede jacket. He was appearing on the television program Friends at the time, and he was wearing the jacket he was wearing in Friends. And he came with his wife and his child, and they were perfectly lovely, but it was Tom Selleck. And I said to him, I know you've been to the White House many times to do events for President Bush. Haven't you been? Oh, no, he said, I'd come here. They'd put me in a holding room. Then it'd be time to go out to the stage. I'd do whatever I was supposed to do, and then I'd go home. So I've never been around the house. I was astounded. So I walked them around the house, and it was interesting to me. The Secret Service officers at different stations, who are accustomed to seeing every interesting person and never bat an eye, all popped up with cameras to say, may we please have a photo with Tom Selleck. He was delightful. He was not self-important. He was really a lovely man.
Yeah.
And the next day, I was in my office with the door closed, and I opened it, and my associate director had an enormous vase with 24 white roses on it. And I said, oh, Holly, who has sent you these beautiful flowers? She said, no, they're for you, from Tom Selleck. Ah. I kept them, I dried them.
Yeah.
Tom Selleck.
Yeah, and you are a lady who's also shown around Tom Hanks and, and everybody.
Person. Such a nice person. Pretty much everyone is on their best behavior when they come to the White House. Not everyone, but pretty much.
Well, we've got to tell the story of Larry Hagman and his tie.
I will choose my words carefully. So Larry Hagman came to the White House with Sharon Stone and Sharon's sister, and I was walking them around. Sharon and her sister were off looking at the portrait of Martha Washington. I was explaining to Larry the iconic significance of the Washington portrait, what all the symbolism means. And when I finished, I was looking for something to say. Now, my attitude in life is, if I'm having an interaction with someone, I hope that when we're finished, they leave happier than when we started. That's kind of how I feel about people. So I was looking for something to say to Larry, but whatever you say has to be genuine. It can't be, insincere. So I glanced over and said, oh, Larry, I like the colors in your tie, but I can't quite make out the pattern. What is that pattern? And he said to me, it's ducks in an inappropriate, intimate physical activity. But he used only one word, and it's a really bad one. And I said, what? And he said, it's ducks in an inappropriate, intimate
Well, if we said it's ducks, ducking.
It's ducks ducking.
But he didn't say the word ducking.
That's exactly correct. So I leaned in and looked, and I said, oh, wow, I did not know Donald and Daisy could do that. And thought to myself, what kind of a man wears a tie like that to the White House and then says something like that to a woman he just met? But as I said a moment ago, the celebrities are different from you and me.
Yeah.
So we ended up over in the Oval Office because the president wanted to visit. And at the end of the visit, I said, Mr. President, whatever you do, don't look too closely at Larry's tie, knowing that, of course, he would.
He would.
So he did what I did. He glanced at it and said, oh, that's one of those Disney ties. I have a bunch of those, but my advisors won't let me wear them. Then he looked more closely and said, oh, wait, that's Disney meets the Kama Sutra.
Crumbs. But I mean, while a lot of people will go, oh, what? Like you said, why would he wear that tie to the White House and then say what he said to you? But you later became friends.
We became friends, and he was lovely to me. I got to stay overnight in his fabulous home in the mountains of Ojai above Santa Barbara. Just an incredible house. We slept in the Mary Martin suite on Mary Martin's butter yellow linen embroidered sheets.
Yeah.
Larry had an enormous Harley-Davidson motorcycle, and the kickstand for the motorcycle consists of a chrome skeletal arm with the hand and the middle finger raised
He's
up.
that sort of guy.
He was that sort of guy,
Yeah.
but he had a great charm about him, and everyone loved him from I Dream of Jeannie and from Dallas.
Oh, that's right,
he was
going way
sort of
back.
iconic. So.
Yeah, he really was. He was a great character. You can't, when you write about the Clintons in your stories, I mean, you clearly admired them very much, both of them. So how did the Monica Lewinsky scandal affect you and your staff? What did you think? How did you cope?
The news broke the day I had just had 4 wisdom teeth pulled. I was at home in bed under the influence of strong pain meds. So the news came on the television, and I watched it, and I thought, okay, that couldn't possibly be really happening. I'm going back to sleep. An hour or so later, I turned on the television again, and there was the news, and I realized this is real. It took me about a minute, probably not even that, to think to myself, if Ken Starr is going here to a sex scandal.
That's the prosecutor.
Yes. What that means is he spent all this money, millions of dollars, and all this time searching for some financial scandal related to Whitewater. He cannot find anything. He cannot go back to his Republican masters and say there isn't anything there. So he's come up with a sex scandal instead. And if it took me a minute to figure that out, it'll probably take the American people about a minute and a half. So, but it was horrible. I mean, the news rolled out. There were times in my office where I'd close the door, put my head down, cry, but I only allowed myself 10 minutes. If I had to cry, I could have 10 minutes to do that, but then I had to buck up, open the doors, and we were back to business. I told my staff, I know you're watching the news, I know it's upsetting. If you want to talk about it with me, come and talk about it. But here's the thing. The American people sent us here to do a job, and we are not going to be stopped in doing our job for the American people. So put it aside the best you can, but we're here to work for the American people, and that's what we're going to do.
I can see that instinctively, particularly because of the way you knew Bill from so long ago, that you didn't want to believe it, but ultimately you had to believe it, because ultimately it was true and he confessed. So then, how did you cope with it? Because here was a man you truly believed in whom you trusted yourself.
It was heartbreaking to think that he would be so reckless, so selfish. I thought of all of us who had worked heart and soul to get him to the White House, who were working 20-hour days, not seeing our families, not watching our kids grow up to support his agenda. And the idea that he would be so reckless was almost incomprehensible. And in the White House itself, he was so embarrassed, and he would not look people in the eye. No one wanted to look him in the eye. It was just, we did our job, but it was heartbreaking. And the day that he finally admitted what had happened, a woman who worked for me was very close to the Clintons and was upstairs in the residence. They were getting ready to go on their holiday to Martha's Vineyard. She came down, closed the door to my office, sat in a chair and wept and said, I have never seen a woman as devastated as Hillary is. She absolutely believed him. I know people say, oh, she must have known. She did not. She believed him. And she was just struck in the heart. So since they were leaving to go on holiday, they were going to take the helicopter to the plane, and that was one of my responsibilities. I had to go out to the ground floor and make sure there were no staff around hoping to see the president. I wanted to give them their privacy. They walked out of the house, and there's an iconic photo of them with Hillary in the turquoise jacket and Chelsea between them holding onto her parents' hands, like, I'm not going to let you go.
Yeah.
It was really, really awful. And it's so sad that I think the Clinton presidency was an enormously successful presidency on so many levels. But for the rest of history, that will always be
Yeah.
attached to it. It's
Yeah.
really heartbreaking.
And it was scary for you and other members of staff, sort of waiting for the phone call where you had to go and be interviewed by the prosecutors and meet lawyers, and then realise that you had to have your own legal representation, or you'd feel that your whole job was being compromised. And there were many staffers who were really seriously worried about the debt, that their own future, their professional future, and the debts they were rolling up just in legal
Tens
bills.
of thousands of dollars in legal fees to be represented in front of the FBI or at congressional hearings. And I got a call. I thought no one was interested in me, but I got a call 10 o'clock at night at home. Ms. Bates, this is so-and-so from the FBI. Oh, now we'd like to interview you. Oh, really? Yes. How about tomorrow night, this time, your house? I said, well, if you want to talk to me, isn't it about my job? Wouldn't you interview me at work? They said, oh, we've been forbidden to come onto the White House campus. It's just more convenient for people if we meet them at home. I was smart enough to say, please give me your number and I will call you tomorrow. When I went to the office, I called my friend, actually the man I had called from Air Force One, who's an attorney. And I said, Lansing, I got this call from the FBI last night. They want to meet with me. Do you think I need a lawyer? Never ask a lawyer if you think you need a lawyer.
No.
Stupid
say
question.
yes.
So he said, sit right there. Don't leave the phone. 5 minutes later, he's on the phone with the head of the law firm and a couple of other attorneys. Now, I had been friends with these people for decades, so my arrangement was different. Because my relationship predated my White House service, they were allowed to give me their services. I did not have to pay for their legal services. So on the phone, they introduced me to one of the lawyers and said, Mitch is going to be your lawyer, and there's nothing in the world he likes better than taking on these crazy investigations that are designed purely to stop people from doing their job. So we met, and then he called the FBI on my behalf, and then the FBI came to an office at his law firm, and that's where we met, and I told them everything I knew, which was not much and not helpful. But I had a friend, a woman who worked for me, who was just hounded by them. And the way the system works is they're very clever. They interview you, they ask a list of questions, you give the best answers you can. They go away for 6 months.
Yeah.
You think it's done.
Yeah.
They come back in 6 months and they ask you the same questions all over again. If your answers deviate in the slightest bit from what you said the first time, you must be lying.
Yeah, they call you a liar.
They call you a liar. And it's as if people's recollections of something that happened 2 years ago or 3 years ago might be hazy or fuzzy.
See, that's what most people don't think of. You read the headlines and it's all about the Clintons or Lewinsky or whatever. You don't think of the other people around them whose lives are being completely affected day in, day out. And it's wearing you down, and it's designed to wear you down. I
It's
guess.
designed to stop you from doing your
Your job. Yeah, and as you said,
they could not stop Bill Clinton by stopping him being elected. So they set out to stop his success by stopping us from doing our jobs. And I think pretty much everyone I knew at the White House was determined we're doing our jobs no matter what.
yeah. It's interesting as well the toll it takes on you professionally. One of the sequences in your book describes how by this time you were living on your own, your children a bit grown up, or at school or at college, and you realised that you were being invited to all these wonderful events, and you went along on your own. And at the end of the event, you drove back home alone, and you open your front door and you go in and you're on your own. So your life is your job, but it's still not quite enough. And there was a time when you thought, hang on a minute, I've got to look after me.
Yes, I was very lonely. I was divorced and alone for 4 years, and it was a very lonely time for me until I met someone. It really was. You need, or I need, contact. I realized at one point I have not touched another human being for 2 years. That's torture.
Yeah, it's not good for you, is
But
it?
I picked up a hobby that was my saving grace. You know, men or somebody may pick up golf. They're outside, they're doing something completely different. It refreshes the mind, it's good for the body, whatever. I wasn't going to do a sport. But I discovered dancing. I discovered that there are wonderful venues in Washington, D.C. I'm sure there are ballroom dancing classes and all that. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do what we used to refer to as barroom dancing. And enormous dance halls since the 40s where people go and dance. So I read about this and I thought, maybe that's what I should be doing on the weekend. I took myself down there. I was watching people. It was a waltz class and then a dance.
But that takes courage to go to
Yes,
a
I was
dancing thing
quite
on
at
your
the
own.
back of the room. And a nice man came up to me and said, would you like to dance? And I said, I would, but I have no idea how. Have never done this. And he said, that's okay, come with me. So we 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 around the room. He was so kind and patient with me. I spent the afternoon there and I thought, oh, I love this. And it's so different from my job. So I took classes, I learned waltz, I learned swing and Lindy. And then after about a year of that, someone invited me to a tango event. And I said, but I don't know how to tango. He said, just come. And I fell in love. I mean, it was just, I thought, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's the most fun two people can have in public.
Yeah, and it worked for you. I mean, it transformed your life.
I went out sometimes 4 or 5 nights a week dancing. It was fabulous to me. And I discovered what I had not known before, which is that making my body learn a physical skill actually made me smarter.
Oh, yeah.
So I could sit at my desk and think, wait, my brain is working differently from the way it worked before, which was quite a surprise to me. I loved it.
I have a million more questions to ask you, and I'm not going to be able to get through them all, but anyone who wants to can read through the book because it's just brilliant. But there's a lovely one of, you got to know the writers of The West Wing, because everybody must ask you, is The West Wing what it's really like? And they did actually portray your job once, but it wasn't quite what you wanted.
Sort of, kind of.
Yes, go on.
In the 90s, my son had given me a TiVo, the first DVR, and it captured, can you believe it, 9 hours of programming.
Wow.
It was the coolest thing. So I had a season pass for The West Wing, which I loved. The producers or the writers would call me once a week. Melinda, CJ's going to have a meeting about this. Where would that happen? Who would be in the meeting? What? So I was an unofficial consultant and loved it. At that time, I had a boyfriend, Steve, and we'd been at an event. We came home, settled in to watch the episode of The West Wing. And in the early part of it, the press secretary, CJ, announces there's a problem. Bring me the director of the White House Visitor's Office.
That's you!
I sat up. They wrote me into this script. They're great. They wrote me. I was so excited. Until they brought their director of the White House Visitor's Office, who turned out to be quite an elderly man with a British accent and a very snooty attitude. I was crushed. I was so upset. I went into my little home office, sat at the computer, and wrote a poem. It was December. It was the time for, 'twas the night before Christmas and all through the house. So with that cadence in mind, I wrote a 2-page poem about how devastated I was. We'll see how the right-wing Hezbollah gets on. We'll see how the West Wing performers get on with the right-wing Hezbollah when we are all gone, and like that.
Yeah.
So the next day at work, I faxed it to the writers, and then I got a quick phone call, and they explained to me that they actually had written me, a character like me, into the script. They had also written in, because of the storyline, one of the White House curators. And in the end, they had to compress those 2 characters into one, and they went with the curator.
And you lost out.
But I was very disappointed. Lost my moment of glory.
Yeah, it's a shame about that, but you've had wonderful moments of glory. So what was it like ultimately having to leave? What was your last day like at the White House?
Leaving is so hard. It took a long time for me to pack up my stuff, because we had furnished, the White House will furnish every office, of course, but my office I had furnished with family antiques and beautiful pieces and all this memorabilia and stuff and boxes, and it was a lot of, so I'd been doing that gradually. And thank goodness I had made a list when I brought in the furnishings, which had been signed off on by official people, because one of the things that happens is in the last week or so, the Secret Service redeploys all the officers and agents you have gotten to know so well and brings in the new people who will be serving the new administration. So these new people didn't know us from Adam, and here I am walking out of the White House with an enormous gilt mirror or a rug or something. I had to show my list, so it was good I had done that. And very few of us in the Clinton White House had prepared to simply leave, because we had assumed that our vice president, Mr. Gore, was going to win, and that when he did, we would have a gradual transition to our friends in the Gore administration, which sadly did not happen. So now it's time to leave, and the last day was just really heartbreaking. I had my last few boxes. I had to go over to the executive office building and turn in my badge and any official thing I had. The office was completely empty, because the people representing the National Archives come into every office and remove everything They remove hard drives from computers. They remove every speck of paper. And because I knew that, I had prepared a care package for the people following us. People thought we were awful to the incoming Bush people. We were not. It is true some of the people in the West Wing took out the W keys
I
from the
wondered if that
typewriter.
was true.
They did do that, but come on, that was funny.
Yeah.
I prepared a large care box into which I put the supplies you need to get on. There wasn't even a pencil or a piece of paper. So I put all those things in and gave the box to the Secret Service. Their break room was on the lower level underneath mine in the East Wing. And I said, when the new people come, they'll need this. Please give it to them. I knew people who put vases of roses, left notes saying, welcome to the most exciting time in your life. Nobody read about any of that. You only read about supposedly we vandalized stuff. It was so wrong.
It's always
but
negative.
it was heartbreaking. It was very hard to adjust. And the hardest thing I realized after a while is, you may leave a job that you love and people that you've so loved working with, and it's a beautiful place, but you're pretty sure you can go back to visit the place, you can go back to reunite with the people. When you leave the White House at the end of a term, once you're out the door, you're out the door. You have no more access to the place that you love and has been almost your home for all these years. And you're leaving behind people who will go in 100 different directions, and you don't know if you will ever see them again or connect with them again. And you can't put it out of your mind, to just sort of move forward, because it's on the news every night on television. There's a new sheriff in town. It's very exciting. And in our case, it was a new administration we didn't like much, and people we didn't approve of were in our jobs doing things we didn't like. I dreamed about the White House for a year, several times a week. It got to the point where I was really sick and tired of dreaming about the White House. Thank you. Can we move on now?
Dreams. Yeah.
It took exactly a year. In January of the following year, I stopped dreaming about the White House. It was interesting to me.
It is. It's a relief in a way, because you've got to leave that part of you behind.
Yes.
But you must keep in touch with people.
Well,
what about the Clintons?
Oh, I am in touch with both of them. Bill just had his birthday, and I sent, he likes old documents related to the presidency and presidents, and I can find those on eBay or in flea markets and stuff. I'm always sending him something. And for Hillary, I send, her birthday is at the end of October, I send toys for the grandkids, because she has everything. But a puzzle or a puppet she can use with the grandkids she likes. So and they'll send me a thank you note.
And also, you're a great collector, because all the way through the book, when something cool has happened, or you've been somewhere special, or you've met somebody special, you usually manage to find a way of just putting in your handbag something like a little calling card or a table card, or something that's going to remind you of that moment.
Well, the first time I was honored to be seated next to the president at dinner was at our Georgetown College reunion at the White House. It was a great honor to sit with the president. After dinner, he got up to go and greet other guests, and I glanced over and saw his place card, the president, and I thought to myself, it's not as if he's going to need it.
No, it's nice to have, isn't it?
Picked it up and put it in my
so
pocket.
You've got a nice little collection.
And I was smarter than a lot of my colleagues, because everyone assembled boxes and boxes of souvenirs, but people didn't deal with them. I had a particular cabinet in my office into which I would chuck agendas, programs, notes I sent the president, notes I sent the first lady, notes they sent to me, photos that the photo office would send me of myself and the president doing something or whatever. And I made myself, every 6 months, put those things into an album, so that they were fresh in my mind, the sequence of things, and who was there, and what it felt like, and what we did. So at the end of 8 years, I had 24 albums this thick, full of, because none of us could keep a journal. If you kept a journal or a diary, it would be subpoenaed.
Yeah.
So I had my albums of photos and notes.
Yeah.
And they were my my research materials for my book.
Well, yeah,
that's how I was
treasure,
able to remember all
they?
those things.
Yeah. And what are you doing now? Are you still dancing?
Oh, sadly, not for a while, because I moved to Mexico, and I've been living in Mexico for a while. Right now I'm in Virginia. My boyfriend has a house in Virginia, and there's very few opportunities to dance, which I miss. But last night, the pianist on this ship played a tango for us, and we got up and stumbled our way through it. I'm glad you did
that. It's lovely to see you on Viking ships now doing your talks.
Oh, it's
Isn't
such
it
a
brilliant?
thrill. This cruise line is just amazing. The idea that you will experience new places, that you will experience old places in new ways. I think it's just brilliant.
And there isn't a book that's not worth reading.
Oh, everywhere you go, down by the pool, there are books.
Yeah.
Beautiful books.
Yeah.
Explorers.
And your book is amongst them now, and you're there doing your lectures as well, live and on the in-room TVs and everything. It's wonderful hearing you talk. You obviously you still enjoy that interaction with people.
Oh, I love interacting with people. And I love sharing my stories, especially love sharing them with people who haven't heard them before.
Yeah.
And so enjoy hearing them. And I think my favorite compliment of all came from a cruise guest a while ago who said that I don't discuss politics from the stage or on the ship. What I do is share stories about our common history that we all can celebrate. And I thought, oh, thank you so much, because that was my goal.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah, because I mean, there are so many stories, obviously through your years walking people around the White House and telling of all of the amazing first ladies there has ever been, and some of the quirky, curious stories about the different presidents and us British burning down the White House and things like that.
All is forgiven.
I know. Thank you.
All is forgiven.
Thank you very much. Look, Melinda, it's been absolutely fabulous meeting you again. We met yesterday for tea, didn't we? And we had a lovely time over tea. But thank you so much for telling me even more of your stories.
Oh, it's been
But
a
for anyone
pleasure.
else who wants to know, it's called White House Story. It's the inside story of the White House, a memoir by Melinda Bates.
And available on Amazon.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. So there you are, another Thursday interview here on Viking TV. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next week.